It's Friday. Tony McLelland, how are you, my friend?
I know, I'm good. Do you know, I was actually sitting here dancing to that background 30-second intro. Any little bit of music and I'm there and I'm dancing. That's my excuse. So thanks for having me, Gary. It's great to be here.
Oh, well, thank you for bearing with me, being my guinea pig early on in my live journey, which, as most people know, was pretty disastrous in terms of technological
Yeah.
exploration. So we're back, we're fresh, we're working, and I just want to invite everyone watching us, follow Tony, join us for the next 25 or 30 minutes. It's going to be fun, but you know where I go with this conversation, Tony. Right now, in this moment, what's on your heart and mind? I'm really curious, and that'll be the fuel for our conversation today.
What's on my heart and mind? I am in a space where I'm feeling like we're just coming out of lockdown and we've been presented with so much things over the last 18 months. And I just want to get a conversation or get people thinking around how are we influenced by what is being presented to us? Is it the real world that's being presented to us by the media, by influences, by all this clickbait? When really we need to be kind of thinking about what's really going on underneath, and how it kind of replicates what's going on in organizations. So that's kind of really where I'm going, just not going with what's presented by the media, but let's think about what's really going on and how do we find out what's really going on and how do we be curious about that. So that's kind of where I'm at the moment, because that's where the answers are, really, isn't it?
Oh, I love it. I love it, Tony. So tell us a little bit about, like, why do you think that's on your heart and mind at the moment? Is it, you said, because we're coming out of lockdown? Do you think we may be losing this final sort of forced slowdown and we're all going to get busy again soon? Is that part of
Well, I
it?
think that we need to be mindful of what are we coming out of lockdown into. So, is that different to what's been presented to us? Does it feel differently? But really, kind of, one of the reasons why I'm coming from that perspective as well is, well, there's a couple, but I'll share one, and that is that you spend more time on social media, and the more time that you spend on social media, you see lots of things that's been presented. This is what's going on. This is the news. This is what real life is. But actually, is it real life? You've got influencers that are influencing what their agenda is, and lots of. Haven't we ever challenged that? Do we ever challenge what an influencer says to us? Sometimes I see it and I think, am I the only one? Am I missing something here? And it also beggars the question that, even though I'm not going to get too controversial because some of them I do love, but, are influencers actually experts? Yes, they're expert at influencing, but, I think we just need to give some more thought to that too,
Oh, this is really interesting, right, for me, because, as you say, it's almost like leadership for me, Tony, which is you have these sort of pedestal roles in society or in the workplace. We're like, okay, I'll defer to that person because they are the fill in the blank. And I love what you're inviting us to do, which is to think, actually, how do we want to show up coming out of this lockdown? Like, who do we want to be? What difference do we want to make? And not just defer.
And actually, is it aligned with where we were? Where we were, like, for example, last week, where we thought it was going to be and we're preparing, and then we're stepping out and it's like, oh, okay, so I thought it was going to be like this. So it's almost like, let's dig a little bit deeper into what's really going on. And when I think about that, and I think about the work that I do around organizational culture and those types of things, crisis management, Gary, well, it makes me start thinking about things like Shine's organizational culture, and that whole model around the artifacts, what the exposed values and the basic assumptions. That's what it makes me start thinking about. And it's those basic assumptions that are below the visible level that's what's really going on. But what we actually see is we see the bits that are presented by these organizations, and those bits are the lovely staff rooms and the lovely uniforms and the loveliness and the smiles and everything. I saw a post. I remember I saw a post once where some you know, some people, I think it was a fast food takeaway, they were wearing t-shirts saying, "I love my job." Yet they all looked as miserable as hell.
It's really interesting. Look, it's so interesting for me because
It's not leveling up.
yeah, there's a word that's really, for those that know me, that's really important, and I try and model it, but fall off the wagon as we all do. But congruence. So actually, are we actually modeling the behaviour that we say matters to us?
Absolutely, and that's what we need to. That's what we need to be doing, modeling it, and that kind of brings me to another point, Gary, which is sometimes we have good intent. We have those good intentions, but we just don't know how. Everyone talks about know the why. What's your why? What's your why? Yes, why? But actually, you can have your why, but if you don't know your how, you're stuck in your why. You've got purpose, but you're not moving to action.
Yeah, big, massive topic, and you know something, I'd even go as far as saying, even if you have got your why and you think you know what your how is, you can go into paralysis. I certainly go into that state at a time where I'm like, okay, I'm pretty clear on what difference I want to make. I think I know how to do it, and then I'm like,
and this is absolutely it. We can be frozen by paralysis, and but this is the bit where it's like, well, actually, ask for help.
Yes.
Ask for help, offer it, accept it. I know it sounds as easy as that, and it can be if you want it to be. Some people don't find it quite so easy to ask for help, but that's why we've got to be more proactive and look for signs. Offer it before somebody asks. Be proactive. Don't wait for somebody to ask for help. Just offer it a little bit. Disguise it if you need to. But and quite often I disguise the help that I offer in a different way so that people don't feel as if their ego is bruised or pride, you know. So yeah, it's the how and it's the help, because that's what moves you to action. So that's kind of like, I want people to dig a little bit deeper. Why am I feeling this way? Why are things presenting like this? And when you've really, you know, marinated in that and got your why, think about, how am I going to transfer this into action? How am I going to move to that action? What do I need? Who do I need to help me with that? Because let's face it, we can't do it on our own. So so that's kind of where it's at the moment. And actually, you know, it's almost like when you mirror it across what's going on right now, we're coming out of COVID, or so are we coming out? But let's say that we're moving in that direction, and then you mirror it across with what's going on in organizations.
Mm-hmm.
It's very similar, isn't it, in terms of what's being presented and what's actually happening. So that's what I just want to encourage people to do, is think about what's actually going on, and that involves curiosity and questioning and listening and observing and all of those things that we need to get used to doing.
I would summarize that as saying, being human. How do we actually try and genuinely get out of our head, only our heads? And I think we talk about this, Toni, is so joining up that head and heart. You need both, but we've over-indexed on the head for so long now. And I think coming out of this pandemic, we've got to lead with our heart plus our head. Otherwise, we're just going to go back to a lot of the crap that we could leave behind.
Absolutely. And just going back to some of my work, Gary, what's happened is that, because I help organizations, because I've got 4 titles, yeah. So it's kind of critical friend, crisis navigator, business mentor, and my other one is accountability partner, because I want people to just really start moving to action and being accountable. And I had a conversation with somebody earlier on about that whole accountability piece. It's a big thing. So really, I want people to move to action. And in some of my work as a crisis navigator, when I'm going into organizations or people are saying, well, we've got this problem, can you help us? quite often, Gary, they send me large 200-page documents, policies that need rewrite. You can send me all of that. But actually, whilst it's necessary, most of the time it sits on the shelf gathering dust. Who's going to read it? Who's going to look at it? I'm happy to look at your business plan, but that's not where I'm going to find my answer. I'm actually going to find my answer by coming into your organization, speaking to people, observing, sitting in the back of a team meeting, just asking key questions, because I know what questions to ask. That's where I'm going to find my answers, with the people, not in the paper, because let's face it, paper can say anything it wants to say.
I love it. How do you feel? Do you feel, from sort of looking at the clients you work with or people you're talking to, Toni, is there a more open, is there more willingness to engage in this sort of reflective practice, almost, in a way, you know, bringing in Toni as the sort of the advisor or the critical friend to really diagnose what's working well and what isn't? Do you feel there's an increase in that coming out of the pandemic?
There is, and I think it's because there's more of an increase in understanding self-awareness. What is it, you know, and exploring that particular piece, because I think that and this is nothing against anyone that does executive coaching, I think it's great. But sometimes, especially in the space that I'm in, which is crisis navigation, that's not always the obvious answer to sign up to a whole year worth of executive coaching. Because actually, you know, when organizations are working through something, they want to work it through very quickly. They haven't got a year. So it's like, what do we need to maneuver now? The executive coaching might be part of the long-term solution. But right now, and sometimes, Gary, what it is that sometimes these behaviors are so embedded that they just can't be changed with a 6-month program or a year program. So we've got to think of other things. And it is about self-awareness. You know, I was talking to somebody recently and they said to me, you know, this particular leader needs to do this, he needs to do that, he needs to do all these things. And I thought, well, why are you getting so caught up in this space that's doing nothing but causing you frustration, when he's never worked like that for the last 30 odd years? So why is he going to start now? Don't think that 6 months worth of executive coaching is going to fix that, because actually, if these are embedded behaviors, so we've got to really be able to identify what types of behaviors there are, but it's really about getting people to do that for themselves. So a lot of it is self-talk, self-awareness, understanding where they can apply.
So this just comes back. So there's a phrase that I'm getting more and more. It's kind of clear and clear for me. As you know, I work in big corporate, work in the chemical industry as part of my day job. You know, we've both got big global networks, Toni. The clarity that I have, that if we don't do that inner work that you're speaking about, that deeper internal reflection, not just like, who am I, what do I want to do with my life, but actually, is there a wounded child inside? Do I have dysfunctional reactions to certain triggers? And why is that? You know, if we've not done any of that, then we just carry on with the same old, don't we?
Absolutely. Because, I mean, you know, I'm a case in point. I can tell you things that I done when I was younger that have influenced me even now, that are still a part of my life. Would I have realized that probably 20 years ago? Probably not. As I become older, I'm more self-aware, and I realize, well, actually, these are the things that have made me who I am right now. And, you know, even if I wanted to, sometimes I can't even get away from it, you know, even if I wanted to, because that's part of me. So sometimes when people are going into these organizations, they think that actually they can change these things, but can they be really changed? Sometimes it's like telling my 83-year-old mother rather, to do something that to undo something that she's been doing for the last 40 odd years.
Not an easy task. Not even.
And I say to my sister all the time, stop. You know, don't, because like all you're doing is causing yourself frustration. It's not going to happen. It's not going to change. It's not going to change. Leave her alone. Let her be happy. Let her do what she wants to do. So, you know, it's slightly different, but
I'm really curious for anyone that like either watching now or watch this back, Toni. What's your invitation, like, based on where you are right here, right now, as you've shared brilliantly in the first 15 minutes? Do you have any sort of invitations or recommendations for people who might be watching us now or in later going, I sort of know intuitively that what Toni's saying is right. It would be helpful to do more of that deeper dive, but I've never done it before. And I'm actually pretty terrified to even go there as a senior leader or other.
Yeah. And I think that there's so many, and I think that you've got to find the right people to work with if it is something that you need to work with someone, because there's so many people out there that will want to beat up on somebody else, or, you know, point the finger at, or, you know, and it's really, you've really got to find the right people that can help you with what it is that's needed. You really do need to do that self-awareness, because it's all very well looking outwards at an organization, but if you're not including yourself in that and doing that piece of work yourself, because let's face it, leaders, you know, are the ones that are influencing the organization with their own behavior. I've been in organizations where the leader has gone and left behind behaviors that have now been adopted by the organization, but the leader's not there. So you go in, so it's the organization that now has the behavior, which we call culture, I guess. So you kind of have to unpick that. So as a leader, it's really about thinking about how influential you are, even if you're not, you know, how influential your behavior is. And it goes back full circle to what you said, Gary, about leading by example. People are watching you, however whatever it is that you're doing, whatever it is that you're saying. By that.
There's a really good example of this that I saw this morning. So have you seen all of social media blowing up around Brewdog and their CEO? No. So basically, there's been an open letter written by a number of the employees. You had this outward facing projection of Brewdog, sustainable beer company, you know, the perfect sort of darling of this sort of high growth industry, you know, planting forests, etc. And I think a lot of that is authentic, Toni. But there's been an open letter about the culture, and actually that it's not what it's been projected to be. And I think it's James Watt. So he's replied, fair play to him, openly. He's done a letter saying, I apologize. You know, these people are right to hold me to account. You know, I haven't focused enough on the people. But it's just a brilliant example. And one of the comments, it's from a good friend of mine, actually, Tim. He put on there, thank you for being vulnerable. Thank you for publicly declaring that you're owning where the mistakes are, but you're not involving yourself in the development of how this is going to turn around.
Right. That's right.
And it is a brilliant call out and speaks brilliantly to what you just shared. So you can say everything on a piece of paper and project it outwards, but if you are not modeling the behavior, particularly
and including yourself in that, and including yourself in that, and that self-reflection and that self-awareness, and you know, because it's almost like sometimes when I'm in these organizations, Gary, what actually happens is that, you know, I'm aligned with whoever's commissioned me. So that's where my loyalty is, you know. And sometimes I find out things that I think that they should actually know. And you know what? I'm actually faced with sometimes the dilemma of, should I share? What should I share? How should I share? Because they don't always react in the way that they should. Do you see what I mean? So that is always one of the trickiest pieces for me to maneuver, because it's all very well giving feedback to everybody else. You're working this way, you're not working that way. But when it comes to yourself as the leader, I've seen people take it so personally, and it doesn't need to be, you know. And unless you're in a position where you can take that, we call it feedback, or, you know, that two-way exchange, then actually it's not going to move forwards. it really isn't going to move forward. So do you see what I mean, Gary? It's like
it's so important. I'm actually just putting across the bottom here as well. So, you know, I did a podcast on vulnerability for 2.5 years, and I think you're speaking so importantly to this. I just wanted to pop this up as a resource for any of you that might want some of this help, alongside reaching out to Toni for her support. You know, there's a podcast here with 138 episodes. Just go and let yourself, is my invitation, let yourself be free of judgment of yourself. Go and have a conversation with Toni. Go and listen to one of the podcasts. Just start to open yourself up. If this is new space for you, just let yourself be open to it and sort of almost marinate in what it's, get used to what it feels like to be in this sort of conversation and not just think about it. Because I think that's a gap, I think, Toni, sometimes.
Absolutely. And one of the things I might say is how many CEOs and leaders have actually been brave enough to undertake a 360 in their organization. Because who's the CEO accountable to? Maybe the chair of the board or the governing board. But actually, have they had their own? Are they brave enough? Do you see what I mean? To do their own 360? And can they? I mean, I'm doing a piece of work. A lot of my, as you know, Gary, a lot of my work is in the social impact and social justice space. So lots of vulnerable groups. And so there's care homes and, services for vulnerable groups and young people. And one of the pieces of work that I'm doing is, they've got a compliance regulation inspection later in the year. And one of the things is that we said, right, okay, so let's do a 360 on the staff. Let's do a survey with the clients, the service users, get their feedback. And let's also do a survey with other stakeholders, like partners that you work with. And then you've got the whole 360. So it came back and, there was some, just nothing major, but a couple of little tweaks. And the person took it really, really well. And she said, oh, no, that's absolutely fine. That's fabulous. And because really being open and transparent about these kind of things, this is what you've said, share some more information, so this is what we've done. That's what regulators want to see as well, isn't it? That you've openly seen that there is an issue or a problem, or you've had some particular feedback. What have you done about it? Or are you going to crucify the person that said it? Because if you're going to crucify, you're never going to get your answers. I even said, well, actually, if you don't want them to come to you, let them come to me. Yeah? And so I made myself available in this hour with this open door scenario, Gary, to see if anyone was going to chime my Zoom doorbell. Yeah? And nobody came.
Yeah.
Nobody came. But what they did do is they went back to her and said that this was little bits of the feedback. And I thought, well, that's good. That they don't need to come to me, that they can come to you and come openly with that. But getting them going in the first place and completing the surveys and the questionnaires was a little bit harder, because it was like, who's going to know? It doesn't go to her, it comes straight to me. So don't worry about that. And I had to reassure the staff that they're not going to know, or anyone's going to be identified based on the feedback. And that is always the big piece. Are you encouraging truth? And then when you get the truth, how do you manage that? Not even what do you do about it? How do you manage it? Because I've also been in situations where I've said to the lead person, and they've taken it so personally, and they've gone and reacted in a way that they shouldn't have. But as that lead person, you should be able to take on board information. And as I say to everybody, when you're doing crisis management, timing is everything. Did you know my voice will go up a little bit? Timing is everything.
Toni's in her deep work when her pitch goes up. Do you know something that you really got? I really had a reaction in like an interesting way as you were talking just then, Toni. And this phrase came to mind, and I never heard it, not consciously. You cannot solve for what you don't understand. And it sounds obvious. It sounds really obvious, but we're so busy, so busy. I think even if you are in do state, like it's almost like you've got this weird paradox where you're either thinking and not doing, or like doing and not thinking. You know, we never, quite often, it never seems to be sort of like both in unison. I think that's what you're speaking to brilliantly here, is how do you get to that understanding and that, you know, understanding and strategy and vision, but then deliver on it. Like, I think that's what you do brilliantly. It's what you do brilliantly.
You know, just kind of, oh, should we say hi to David Pushkin and
yeah, David
no,
and Nikki. Good to see you.
Thanks for joining us. It's great to have you here. And we've got a few minutes, so do feed any comments in or any particular questions. And I think that people really need to look into that and be in a place. My background is public sector predominantly. You know, I've worked with the Ministry of Justice, Home Office, central government. So it's about the Nolan's principles, the 7 principles: integrity, openness, transparency, accountability, selflessness, all of those things. So that's almost embedded within me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the kind of thing that needs to be embedded with leaders as well. And it's all because a lot of them are doing the doing to rather than the doing to themselves, which is a lot of what you speak of, Gary, and the activating consciousness. Let's activate that consciousness and do that self-awareness, because then that's when the real magic starts.
So tell us, as we go into these last few minutes, I'm really excited to understand what's your personal hopes as we do emerge from this very unique period in our history. What are your hopes as we go forward into the next 1, 3, 6 months, Toni?
You know, I'm just going to keep it simple, really, Gary. And I'm just going to encourage anybody that watches us back or anyone that's listening now to don't be so quick to come with the answers. Because you haven't even waited to hear the question. You don't even know what the question is.
Yeah.
Coming with the solution to the problem when you're not really understanding what the problem is, because some of this change lies in individual behaviour, which you need to understand and how to apply it. So it's really, I just want to keep it really simple, Gary, and just encourage people to just look beyond the surface at what's really happening. And then I feel that you'll be getting closer, much, much closer to the answer. So that's what I just want people to do is don't be so quick to judge or make an assumption on the surface. Marinate, ask questions, be curious, dig deeper, and there'll be something there.
I love this, because there's also something for me in what, like, you're amazing at this, how you wrap up where you are right now in the moment towards the end of our conversation. Just perfect.
Yeah, because it's like if I say dig deeper, the gold is always buried, isn't it? You don't find gold sitting on the top of the grass at the top, do you? I know my analogies are very you have to dig for it. If you want the golden nuggets, you have to dig for it. So you're not going to just come along and find it so sitting at the top so easily. And if you think about Shine and his organizational culture, the 3 different layers, it's the same thing. If you think about what's presented in the media, it replicates across. Dig deeper, ask the questions, do your own research, and do your self-awareness, and you'll be closer.
I love that, Toni. And I'd love to add one extra thing, if I may, which is also, don't be in such a rush. If you're in a crisis, you might need to be in a rush, different story. But then you get Toni in. But if you're doing it sort of individually at the moment, like, take your time with this stuff as well. It's taken me 5 years since I sort of suddenly went, oh, I don't have to just chase money and, you know, cars and have a good job title to be happy. Like, it took me till age 39, Toni, to work that out. And I'm still unpicking it. I'm still unpicking it 5 years later.
But you know, the thing about it is, I'm going to say something really quick here now. And anyone that knows me knows that if I can get a netball story in quickly, I will. But this involves rushing and how we look at that. Now, I said to my netballers, there's 7 players on the court. And I said to them, to get down the court, you only allow 5 passes from the goalkeeper to the goal shooter.
Mm-hmm.
So one of them was doing that, and then they dropped the ball and the ball went out and a couple of extra passes went in. And I said, but I said 5 passes down the court. Now, what she thought I said, to do it quickly. I didn't say do it quickly. I just said 5 passes. So it's almost like people interpret quick with short. So what I'm focusing on is the 5 pieces of the shortcut. Doesn't have to be done quickly.
Brilliant.
But measured. Do you see where I'm going? And that was the kind of thing. And I think that what happens is in crisis management, people think it's all in a rush, but actually it's very measured and timely.
I love that. This intentional piece, this strategic intentional piece is huge. I love it. Toni, you are always a joy to spend time with. I want to thank Matthew. Thanks very much, David, for joining us. Always a pleasure. And
thank you.
No tech issue this time.
It was brilliant. But do you know what? Things happen. It's life. Sometimes the imperfect plan can sometimes be perfect too. And thank you for having me, Gary. Really, really a pleasure.
Not at all. We've got to just recognise Matthew for some wonderful summarising here. You know, great insights. 1, are we open to change? 2, need to know how to share truths. Have a 360. Quick is not the same as short. Matthew, I love how quickly you're working through this. Thank you for summarising.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Great. Thank you for joining us. And thank you, Gary, for all you do around activating consciousness and raising self-awareness for individuals. So that's fabulous. Thank you.
No, likewise. Thank you, my friend. Have a great day, everyone. Evening, morning, whenever you see
fairy dust. Lots of fairy dust.
Yeah, literally, not loads, like a boatload. Go and check Toni out at firstlifegroup.com. Connect with her, connect with me. Like, it's all about raising consciousness, being human, and just trying to lift everybody up. We're all equally human. Let's have a great weekend, everyone. Cheers, Toni.
Cheers, everyone. Thanks, Gary. Bye.